Coming up on this Thursday edition of Daybreak, meeting German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin. President Park Geun-hye says the two countries have agreed to share the German unification experience. Merkel says Germany will support the two Koreas' efforts to reunite. Korea's new main opposition party, the New Politics Alliance for Democracy, officially launches, combining the Democratic Party and supporters of maverick lawmaker Ahn Cheol-soo. Plus, the Korean economy grew 3% last year, faster than an earlier estimate, as exports remained strong and consumer spending picked up. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers here in Korea and around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Thursday, March 27th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned in to Daybreak. We begin this morning in Germany, where President Park Geun-hye is on her state visit. With the issue of reunification high on her agenda, the South Korean president met with German Chancellor Angela Merkel on Wednesday. For details on those talks and what else the president has been doing in Berlin, let's now connect live to our correspondent Choi You-sun, who is travelling with the President. You-sun.
Hi, Mark. And as expected, the reunification issue on the Korean peninsula took up a large portion of President Park's discussions with Chancellor Merkel. At a joint press conference, Merkel said that Germany, which has gone through unification itself, is responsible for supporting the two Koreas' will to reunite, and that Seoul and Berlin are discussing the issue. When asked about President Park's recent description of reunification on the Korean peninsula as a bonanza, Merkel said Germany's unification was, in fact, a bonanza. Coming from East Germany herself, Merkel said she witnessed the lives of more than 17 million East Germans change after the fall of the Berlin Wall. She advised Koreans on both sides of the border to be open to and understanding of each other and prepare for the economic aftermath of reunification. President Park also garnered Merkel's support behind her trust-building policies towards North Korea, at the same time urging Pyongyang to give up its nuclear weapons program. On the economic front, the two leaders agreed to sign a cooperation agreement related to innovation, such as fuel cell production and electric car batteries. There will also be more cooperation between the two sides' small and mid-sized firms in vocational training and science and technology. Mark?
Well, it certainly sounds like they got through a lot during their talks. So what else has President Park been up to in the German capital?
Earlier here on Wednesday, she met with German President Joachim Gauck, who has shown a great interest in inter-Korean reunification. President Gauck was a human rights and democratization activist in the former East Germany. Both leaders shared concerns about human rights violations prevalent inside North Korea. President Park also visited the Brandenburg Gate, a landmark in Berlin, symbolic of German unification. Here, she is thought to have reflected on her reunification drive. And if you look at President Park's itinerary in Germany, you can see that reunification is the main theme of this visit. On Thursday here, she will meet with former German officials who played leading roles in German unification and ask for their advice. The following day, the president is scheduled to speak at a university in Dresden, where she's widely expected to lay out the details of her reunification policy. Mark?
Okay, You-sun, thank you for that. That was our Presidential Office correspondent Choi You-sun reporting on President Park's discussions with German Chancellor Angela Merkel about inter-Korean reunification and boosting Seoul-Berlin ties. Now, China is concerned about escalating tensions on the Korean peninsula after North Korea on Wednesday test-fired 2 medium-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea. China's Foreign Ministry spokesman says Beijing wants all related parties to work together to ensure regional peace and stability. The United States is already in talks with other members of the UN Security Council over ways to punish the North for the launches. North Korea's latest military posturing came a matter of hours after South Korean President Park Geun-hye met with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and US President Barack Obama on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague. Now, another thoughtless remark has been uttered by a Japanese politician that's sure to anger many here in Korea. On Wednesday, co-leader of the opposition Japan Restoration Party, Shintaro Ishihara, said his country's colonial rule of the Korean peninsula in the early to mid-1900s was necessary to defend itself against the Soviet Union's advance into Asia. Ishihara, known for his hawkish views, went on to say the bilateral relationship between Seoul and Tokyo is more important to Korea than it is to Japan. He also expressed doubts about the benefits of the improving relationship between Korea and China. Ishihara's remarks followed the first official meeting of the current leaders from Korea and Japan earlier this week in the Netherlands. A special exhibition was held in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul on Wednesday to raise awareness of Japan's wartime atrocities. Our Ji Myung-gil was there and filed this report.
No colors, no words, just black and white photos that show the horrific scenes from Japan's past invasions of Korea and China. Ruling Saenuri Party lawmaker Kim Il-dong hosted a photo event Wednesday as a protest against Japan's unapologetic attitude towards its past wrongdoings.
We decided to hold this photo exhibition to let the world know about the atrocities Japan committed during World War II. We must never forget the cruelty and pain that our ancestors had to endure due to the Japanese imperialists.
The images are startling. Japanese soldiers mass murdering innocent civilians during the Nanjing massacre in China, simply to learn how it feels to kill on the battlefields. Women who were raped, brutally tortured, and eventually killed with sword bayonets. Japanese scientists conducting surgical procedures without anesthesia on prisoners of war after infecting them with various diseases. The photos clearly show the atrocities that were committed by Japanese soldiers during World War II. This exhibition will be recorded and uploaded onto YouTube in 10 different languages. On the other side of the street, two former Korean comfort women rallied along with their supporters to demand that the Japanese government apologize for victimizing them and tens of thousands of others.
It's really agonizing. We've been holding this rally every Wednesday for 20 years, and still the Japanese government hasn't made an apology or provided compensation. They think everything will be solved if they keep quiet.
Historians say up to 200,000 women, mostly from Korea but also from China, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Taiwan, were forced to serve as sex slaves in the Japanese army brothels during the Second World War. Despite mounting evidence, a minority of right-wing Japanese citizens insist the state and military were not responsible and claim the women were common prostitutes. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Korea now has a new opposition coalition party dubbed New Politics Alliance for Democracy. The launch is sure to shake up the domestic political scene as we draw ever closer to the local elections in June. Kwon So-ah reports.
It's an historic moment for the new political party. The New Politics Alliance for Democracy held its official inauguration ceremony Wednesday afternoon, with hopes of bringing about a new era of politics based on trust and hope.
After 60 years of being the Democratic Party, we have joined with lawmaker Ahn Cheol-soo and are now reborn as the New Politics Alliance for Democracy.
Over 250 delegates, including lawmakers, officials, war veterans, and thousands of citizens from all walks of life, attended the event in southern Seoul's Olympic Stadium. Attendees paid tribute to the 46 victims that died when the warship Cheonan was sunk 4 years ago and commemorated the 104th anniversary of the death of independence fighter An Jung-geun prior to the main event. The new coalition will be jointly headed by Democratic Party Representative Kim Han-gil and independent lawmaker Ahn Cheol-soo for 1 year until it elects a party chairman and leadership next year. They completed legal measures for dissolving their previous parties and will now register as a new one with the National Election Commission. The New Politics Alliance for Democracy will hold 130 seats at the National Assembly, with the vast majority of them being members of the former Democratic Party. The ruling Saenuri Party currently has 156 seats in the parliament. The alliance adopted its platforms at the ceremony, which include a focus on forming a just society and maintaining peace.
If our party and the Saenuri Party can find a smart way to go about it, strong security and better inter-Korean relations can coexist. We can also foster public welfare and promote democracy together. Progressive or conservative, that's not what's significant. The people's livelihoods are.
Now that the New Politics Alliance for Democracy has officially been launched, the party will focus on garnering more support from the general public ahead of the June 4th local elections. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
The Korean economy grew 3% last year, coming in slightly higher than the previously estimated 2.8%. Gross national income also rose 4% on year, but analysts say it's probably just a technicality rather than a tangible recovery. Hwang Ji-hye tells us why.
Korea's central bank said Wednesday that the nation's economy expanded 3% in 2013 from a year earlier. That is faster than the bank's earlier estimate of 2.8% and outpaces the 2.3% recorded in 2012. The Bank of Korea said robust exports and a steady rise in consumer spending drove the higher than estimate performance despite sluggish facilities investment. The upward revision comes with a caveat, however, as the nation's central bank recently adopted new international standards on calculating gross domestic product. Under the new standards, the bank changed the base year to 2010 from 2005 and included contributions from new sectors like research and development to the nation's gross domestic product. Experts point out that the new growth rate does not necessarily mean the domestic economy is on track to a stronger economic recovery.
The domestic economy is showing mixed signals this year. Exports, which account for half of the nation's GDP, looked bad in the first 2 months of this year, but consumption and production were decent.
Korea's gross national income, a gauge of the people's purchasing power, also rose 4% in 2013 from the previous year. The per capita GNI stood at over $26,000 last year, up from around $24,000 in 2012. Meanwhile, the central bank said that the new standards could also impact the bank's new growth forecast that's set to be unveiled early next month, but added it's too early to talk about the degree of change. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
The number of childbirths in Korea tumbled in January to an 8-year low. Statistics Korea said Wednesday that about 41,000 babies were born in January, down more than 6% from a year earlier. It marks the 13th straight month of decline. The agency attributes the downward trend to more young couples holding off on marriage and more newlyweds waiting to have children, largely because of soaring housing prices. Korea's fertility rate was 1.2 per woman in the last 5 years, the fourth lowest in the world, according to United Nations data. And while we're speaking of housing, a growing number of Korean households are finding it harder and harder to keep their heads above water because of their homes. According to a report by the Korea Housing Institute, nearly 2.5 million households considered themselves house poor in 2013. That's up more than 7% from a year earlier. House poor is a term to describe people who are in financial trouble due to high mortgage payments. An official from the Institute said that people tend to regard themselves as house poor when their ratio of debt payments to disposable income exceeds 20%. To reduce the growing burden on households, the official suggested measures were needed to lower interest rates. Now, a musical that took Korea by storm 2 years ago is back with some familiar faces and some new ones as well. The musical is about Korea's traditional singing style, pansori. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won has the details.
This is one of the most beloved stories among the Korean people. Seoul was originally a Korean novel published in the 1970s. It was later adapted into a successful film in the 90s, and then into Changguk, a modernized pansori performance genre. And of course, it was also turned into a musical. First adapted into a musical in 2010, it won 5 musical awards and was put back on the stage in 2012. Now, musical Seoul is back again after 2 years. It's being put on by the same staff, but with some new songs and new actors. Musical Seoul centers on one of the most original plots of the novel, in which traveling pansori artist Yu Bong blinds her daughter Songhwa to develop her singing talents. However different from the original plot, musical Seoul gives Songhwa's brother Dong-ho a new twist. In the most recent adaptation, he wants to become a rocker rather than a pansori artist. Seasoned Broadway musical actor Michael Lee joins the cast to play Dong-ho.
At the core of the character of Dong-ho, he is somebody who is searching for his voice. This is something that all artists can relate to, that all actors, no matter what culture you're a part of, can relate to.
The musical presents diverse genres of music, from pansori and pop to rock music.
Pansori is a main theme of the musical. However, not all the music is from the pansori genre. I paralleled other genres of music like pop and rock to make the pansori stand out for its beauty.
K-pop group MBLAQ's Jio also joined the cast to play Dong-ho. Star pansori singer Lee Ja-ram and famous musical singer Cha Ji-yeon have returned to the stage to reprise their past roles. The musical runs until May 11 at Universal Arts Center in Seoul. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now for a look at some of the international headlines we're following at this hour. We're going to join our Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning, Mark. We'll kick it off at the EU headquarters in Brussels, where EU leaders and U.S. President Barack Obama wrapped a meeting earlier this morning. In a following keynote address, President Obama said Russian President Vladimir Putin had miscalculated had he counted on indifference from the West over Russia's annexation of the Crimea. While stating that there would be no military response to the incursion, he did say a door to diplomacy would be left open as NATO steps up its presence in Ukraine's eastern border, where Russian forces are amassed. The EU and the U.S. are in talks for, quote, deeper sanctions against Russia should it take steps to claim additional parts of Ukraine. This as Russian forces captured the last Ukrainian Navy ship in Crimea on Wednesday. A team of vessels from 6 nations, including Korea, will re-embark on their search for traces of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, which has now been missing for 19 days. Searchers will resume their probe as new satellite images from the French showed 122 potential objects in a 400 square kilometer area of the southern Indian Ocean, their sizes varying from 1 meter to 23 meters. The images were taken on Monday. The recovery mission faces time restrictions, though, as the batteries of the black boxes are expected to run out soon. Malaysian authorities have said the U.S. towed Pinger location is set to arrive in the search area by the end of next week. In one of the most watched cases, trials related to the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the son-in-law of Osama bin Laden has been found guilty of terrorism-related charges in a New York civilian court. 48-year-old Suleiman Abu Ghais was facing charges of acting as an al-Qaeda mouthpiece and using video to recruit new fighters. He was convicted of conspiring to kill Americans and providing material support to terrorists, among others. It took jurors a little more than a day to reach the verdict. The Muslim cleric faces life in prison. Sentencing is scheduled for September 8th. An Ankara court has ordered the Turkish Telecommunications Authority to lift a ban on Twitter, saying the government did not have grounds for the ban. This comes as the Tayyip Erdogan government had blocked users to the popular social media platform. On Friday, users had spread leaked recordings reflecting widespread corruption of government officials, including the Prime Minister's son. Prime Minister Erdogan said the recordings were fake and created by his critics. Twitter, which had itself filed a challenge to the ban, welcomed the news. The Telecommunications Authority has 30 days to honor or appeal the ruling.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with the AFC Asian Cup final drawing, which took place earlier on Wednesday. With Korea seated in Pot 2, they hope to avoid the group of death. And what do you know, not a bad drawing for the Taeguk Warriors as they were drawn in Group A with Australia, Oman, and Kuwait. Of course, with the event taking place in Australia, Australia might have a slight home advantage, but with Korea ranked highest amongst the 4 nations, they should have no problem advancing to the next round. And shifting over to the World Figure Skating Championship, which began yesterday and will go on until the 30th in Japan. And with Kim Yeon-ha's retirement and Adelina Sotnikova not participating, the gold medal is up for grabs. Of course, with Russian gold medalist Adelina Sotnikova's decision not to participate in the event, Karolina Kostner of Italy and Gracie Gold of the United States look to be the favorites going into the women's single event. And without the figure queen, fans in Korea will have their eyes on the future of Korean figure skating, Park Soo-yeon and Kim Hae-jin. And an update on ex-Chicago Cubs pitcher Im Chang-young, who agreed to a 1-year $500 million or roughly $465,000 deal plus incentives with the Samsung Lions. He'll be filling the void left by Oh Seung-hwan as the closer for the defending champions. And of course, with that said, moving over to Game 3 of the semifinals between the LG Sakers and the KT Sonic Boom, with LG up 2-0. And going into the game here right off the bat, the LG Sakers off to a huge lead, taking a 28-18 lead in the first quarter before going into halftime with a comfortable 45-36 lead. But in the third quarter, KT starts rallying in the game, but that rally is cut short as Davon Jefferson explodes with 25 points and 13 rebounds as the LG Sakers head into their first championships in 13 years with a 96-82 win. And finishing things off with some Wednesday night's K-League Classic action, we have some scores here. FC Seoul beats Jeju United 2-0. Seongnam over Suwon 2-0 as well. Gyeongnam defeats Incheon United 1-0. Jeonnam upsets Ulsan 1-0 as well, with Busan and Sangju drawing 1-1. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors take on the Pohang Steelers. And going into the match here, right from the get-go, a foul is called in the penalty area as Jeonbuk's Kayo takes a spot kick here and scores as Jeonbuk goes up 1-0 after just 5 minutes. But the 23rd minute, Yoo Chang-hyun, that's an equalizer, and it's 1-1 after the first half. Of course, going into the second half of the match, 62nd minute, here's Lee Myung-ju. He's going to sneak this one past the goalkeeper. Pohang takes a 2-1 lead before Pohang seals the deal here in the 70th minute thanks to Kim Seung-dae, and that's your final score, 3-1 Pohang Steelers. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, yesterday, lots of areas in the upper parts of the peninsula marked the highest temperatures of the season, including here in Seoul at 21.9 degrees Celsius. And some people were walking around wearing short sleeves yesterday. Well, it's going to be warmer today across the nation. Under lots of sunshine, really, there will be nothing but sunshine across the nation throughout the day. But some areas will wake up to patches of fog this morning, so please drive with extra caution. Now, this somewhat hot weather ushering in today will make us feel more like May than March across the region. So let's take a closer look at those numbers. The morning low in Seoul is starting out at 8. Chilly, but afternoon high will jump up to 21, and Daegu and Gwangju should top out at 25 and 22 respectively, while Busan should get up to 21 under dazzling sunshine. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like down on Jeju and Daejeon will peak to 18 and 22, and Dokdo and Mount Kumgang will soar to 15. Well, as we can see from the numbers, lows and highs are making a huge gap, so please be aware of a big temperature difference and dress accordingly. Well, that's all for now, and hope you have a wonderful day.
Well, thank you very much, Jiyeon, for the weather. You have a wonderful day too. And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today is coming up in about half an hour's time. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.